On my wedding night, I learned one undeniable truth. Being the forgotten wife of a prince was infinitely worse than being a complete nobody. The red candles burned high, casting dancing shadows across silk curtains embroidered with dragons and phoenixes. My so-called husband, Prince Zhao, the current emperor's younger brother, didn't even bother to lift my bridal veil. From behind an ornate screen, his voice cut through the silence, cold as winter frost. "Miss Lin. Since you've entered the prince's residence, behave yourself and stay in your place. I'm busy with state affairs. Don't disturb me unless absolutely necessary." And just like that, he was gone. I yanked off the heavy bridal veil myself and tossed it aside. Well, wasn't that a slap in the face? But honestly, fine by me. My father, a minor official desperately clawing his way up the social ladder, had practically shoved me into this marriage as a secondary consort. Why? Because Prince Zhao was the emperor's most trusted brother. Because maybe, just maybe, his star would rise even higher one day, and our family could ride his coattails to glory. Ha! Why should I be the stepping stone for their ambitions? If you're enjoying this tale of palace intrigue and unexpected motherhood, make sure to subscribe to Lotus Tale Studios for more captivating stories that will keep you hooked until the very end. Since the prince told me to behave, I'd take him at his word. Behave by doing absolutely nothing. From that night forward, the small courtyard in the western corner of the residence became my personal paradise. The kitchen sent food. I ate it, never complained. Seasonal clothing arrived. I wore it. My monthly allowance came on time. I saved every coin. My biggest daily challenge was deciding which sunny spot in the courtyard offered the warmest stone slab for my afternoon nap. Life was peaceful, uneventful, like lukewarm tea on a quiet afternoon. Until one sweltering summer day when Steward Fu came shuffling into my courtyard, sweating and panting, dragging along the chubbiest little dumpling of a child I'd ever seen. The boy looked about 3 years old, dressed in an expensive brocade jacket embroidered with golden chelene. His round cheeks puffed out like steamed buns fresh from the kitchen, and his big black eyes, shiny as polished jade, peeked at me with timid curiosity. "Consort Lin," Steward Fu said, wiping his forehead with a bitter expression. "This is the young master, Zhao Xiaobao." My eyelid twitched. Zhao Xiaobao. Little treasure. Of course I knew who he was. Prince Zhao Chen's legitimate son. His mother, the primary consort, had died bringing him into this world. So why was this little ancestor being brought to my quiet corner? Steward Fu's next words confirmed my worst suspicion. The prince said that since Consort Lin is calm by nature and has little to occupy herself. He carefully searched for the right words while watching my face. The young master is at that mischievous age and needs someone steady to watch over him. From today on, I must trouble Consort Lin to care for him. A thunderbolt from clear skies. Was my peaceful life about to end? I tried to resist. "Steward Fu, isn't this inappropriate? I'm young, inexperienced with children." But he shook his head so vigorously I thought it might fall off. "The prince has spoken. You, Consort Lin, are the most well-behaved and proper person in this residence." He emphasized those words pointedly. "Fine then. Zhao Chen, you're ruthless. You tossed this hot potato at me and even used my own reputation against me." I stared at the little dumpling standing there, this innocent child who was about to wreck my peaceful days. I took a deep breath. So it's babysitting now, is it? The lazy consort forced into service. Young Master Xiao Bao, true to his energetic nature, was like a walking firecracker. His destructive power was terrifying. On his very first day in my courtyard, at lunchtime, he fixed his eyes on a plate of crystal shrimp dumplings. His chubby little hands shot out like lightning. Splat! The entire plate, dumplings, broth, and all, flipped directly onto his expensive brocade jacket. He froze for 2 seconds, looking down at the mess. Then his bottom lip trembled. Wah! The scream drilled straight into my skull. His nursemaid, Nanny Zhong, panicked and rushed to strip him down and wipe him clean. But the little guy twisted like a slippery eel, wailing at the top of his lungs. Covering my ringing ears, I walked over and simply squatted down in front of him, looking straight into those tear-filled eyes. "Xiao Bao," I said, my voice steady. His crying softened slightly. He sniffled and looked at me. The dumplings are gone, I stated matter-of-factly. He blinked, confused. Your clothes are dirty. I pointed at his greasy, soup-soaked front. He glanced down, his lips starting to pout again. Does crying help? I asked. He hiccuped mid-sob, staring at me. It doesn't, I answered for him. Crying won't bring the dumplings back. Crying won't make your clothes clean. Crying. I paused, pointing at his tear-streaked face. Only makes your face hurt and puffy. Instinctively, he touched his little cheeks. They did feel tight and sore. The crying stopped completely. Only pitiful sniffles remained. I stood up and told Nanny Zhong, prepare warm water. Bring clean clothes. Then I turned to him. Stand up yourself. Go wash. The little guy had probably never been treated like this before. He looked dazed but surprisingly pushed himself off the ground and wobbled to his feet, letting Nanny Zhong lead him away. He kept looking back at me every few steps, eyes wide with bewilderment. When Nanny Zhong returned, she stared at me as though I was some kind of miracle worker. Consort Lin, you're incredible. The young master has never behaved like that before. I sipped my tea, smiling to myself. This was nothing. Step 1 in dealing with a spoiled child, talk sense. Whether he fully understands or not, lay out the facts clearly. Let him know that tantrums solve nothing. But my peace lasted less than 2 days. The little ancestor struck again. This time, he somehow slipped into Prince Zhao study, a place that was supposed to be absolutely forbidden. Even mosquitoes needed permission to enter that sanctum. Inside hung a priceless painting, 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains, personally bestowed by the emperor himself. It was painted by a renowned master of the previous dynasty, and Zhao Chen treasured it like his own eyes. And yet somehow, Xiao Bao's chubby little hands had gotten hold of a stick of ink. On that majestic landscape of mountains and rivers, he had drawn the most crooked, ugly turtle I'd ever seen. And just to be helpful, he'd added several lopsided circles near its head, bubbles, apparently. The turtle was blowing bubbles. When Zhao Chen returned from morning court and stepped into his study, his face immediately turned green. Greener than the freshly planted bamboo in the eastern garden. Steward Fu stumbled into my courtyard, shaking so badly his voice quivered. Consort Lin, terrible news. The young master drew on the imperial painting. My heart dropped straight through the floor. This wasn't just trouble. This was catastrophe. A potential execution-level offense. I grabbed Xiao Bao, who was happily poking at an anthill with a stick in the courtyard, completely oblivious to the disaster he'd caused. Scooping him up like a chick, I hauled him straight to the study where a storm was brewing. Zhao Chen stood rigidly at his desk, hands clasped behind his back, his posture taut as a drawn bow. The ruined 10,000 miles of rivers and mountains lay spread across the massive desk, that ugly turtle facing the doorway as if silently mocking us all. Xiao Bao seemed to sense the danger. He shrank his neck and tried to hide behind my legs. I forced myself to step forward. My lord. Zhao Chen spun around, his eyes cold as winter stars, locking onto my face like daggers. This is the result of your supervision. His hand trembled as he pointed at the painting. An imperial gift, destroyed. Do you understand the gravity of this crime? The atmosphere in the study was suffocating, cold enough to freeze blood. Steward Fu and Nanny Zhong were already kneeling, trembling like leaves in a storm. Xiao Bao's little face went pale as he clutched desperately at my skirt. My mind raced frantically. Confess and beg forgiveness? Useless. Shift the blame? Even stupider. In that flash of desperation, my eyes landed on something at the edge of the desk, a few picture books. Xiao Bao's beginner books for learning characters, probably left there earlier. I drew a deep breath. I didn't kneel. I didn't beg for mercy. Instead, I stepped forward, stood beside the desk, and pointed to the crooked turtle. My lord, please restrain your anger and allow me to explain. Clearly not the reaction he expected. His brows knitted even tighter. Speak. Xiao Bao is young and ignorant, I said steadily. He made this mess, and I take full responsibility for my lack of supervision. But my lord, look closely. I pointed at the wobbly bubble circles. The young master is not purely destructive.
Oh,
Zhao Chen sneered, his gaze sharp enough to kill. Doodling on an imperial treasure, is that not destruction? Please, look at these bubbles, I raised my voice slightly. Though clumsy, each circle is nearly closed. This proves he already grasps the concept of roundness, of complete shapes. I pointed at the turtle itself. And this creature, though crude, you can still see the head, body, limbs, and shell are all present. He was imitating the turtles from his picture book. He wasn't deliberately destroying a treasure. He was expressing the world as he sees it, in his own childish way. The study fell utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Zhao Chen stared at me, then at the turtle, doubt flickering across his features. Steward Fu and Nanny Zhong had even stopped shaking, mouths slightly open in shock. Xiao Bao, seeming to realize I was praising him, peeked out from behind my legs with curious eyes fixed on his father. You're saying? Zhao Chen's voice was filled with disbelief. He was learning? Yes, I answered firmly. The young master is lively and curious. Rigid drills bore him. He needs a different approach, learning through play and observation. I braced myself, knowing I was about to gamble everything. If my lord trusts me, this painting might still be saved. Zhao Chen's stare was sharp as a blade, cutting right through me. How? Please grant me brushes and paints, I forced the words out. Might as well try. Better than waiting to be executed. His eyes raked over me like knives. Finally, he spat out a single cold word, granted. Steward Fu scrambled to fetch the supplies, nearly tripping over his own feet. I stepped up to the desk and laid the painting flat, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dipping my brush in green pigment, I began sketching jagged rocks around the ugly turtle. I added clusters of hardy pine branches with careful strokes. Using earthy browns and deep blues, I painted shadows to suggest a quiet mountain pool. In just a few minutes, that grotesque, jarring turtle transformed. It now seemed to swim peacefully in a secluded pond, becoming a serene old turtle lifting its head toward the sky, nestled among pines and stones. Still ugly, yes. But now there was atmosphere, even a touch of rustic charm. The painting had gone from ruined to artistic interpretation. When I set down the brush, my palms were drenched in sweat. The study was silent again. Zhao Chen leaned over the desk, staring at the transformed painting. He stared for so long I was certain he'd call for guards to drag me out for a beating. At last, he straightened. His eyes, when they fell on me, were no longer filled only with cold fury. There was scrutiny, calculation, and the faintest spark of something that looked like surprise. You know painting, he said. Not a question, a statement. I lowered my gaze respectfully. My father once dealt in calligraphy and paintings. I grew up around such things and picked up a little skill. That was the truth. For all his many faults, that was one of my father's few refined pursuits. Zhao Chen said nothing for a long moment. He looked again at the painting, then at Xiao Bao, who was grinning widely at the added scenery around his turtle creation. The icy atmosphere gradually melted. Finally, the prince gave a cold, ambiguous hum. Take him away. If there's a next time, I began. I'll bring my own head to you, I cut in quickly, bowing. He shot me a sharp look, then waved his hand dismissively. Like receiving a pardon from the executioner, I scooped up Xiao Bao, who was still trying to touch his turtle in the painting, and fled the suffocating study. After that incident, Xiao Bao became completely attached to me. Zhao Chen never mentioned sending him elsewhere again. My lazy courtyard officially upgraded to the prince's nursery. Xiao Bao followed me everywhere like a sticky rice cake. His destructive power remained formidable, but somehow, he actually seemed to be learning, at least under my unconventional teaching methods. For example, one morning he tore apart the newly bloomed camellias in the garden. Instead of scolding him, I pulled him close and arranged the scattered petals by color gradient, from deep crimson to pale pink, covering the entire stone table. Xiao Bao, see this? This is red. But reds come in different shades. His eyes went wide as saucers. I took a stick and drew simple pictures in the dirt. The flowers have fallen now, but next spring they'll bloom again. That's the cycle of nature. He seemed to understand, at least a little. A few days later, pointing at the sunset, he shouted excitedly, "Red." Then, pointing at fallen leaves, "Flowers, bloom again." Though his words were clumsy and simple, Nanny Zhong nearly cried with joy. The young master. His recognizing colors. He understands seasons. Another day, instead of chasing butterflies mindlessly across the courtyard, he crouched by an anthill for what seemed like hours, using a little twig to build a bridge for the ants. Cross the bridge, he muttered to himself seriously. I sometimes crouched beside him, watching. Xiao Bao, what are the ants doing? Moving food. He pointed at a worker ant carrying a grain crumb. That's right. They're gathering food for winter. Very diligent, aren't they? He tilted his head at me. Diligent? Yes. Like steward Fu counting supplies in the storehouse. Like Nanny Zhong washing your clothes every day. Working hard without complaining, that's being diligent. He nodded, half understanding. The next day, Nanny Zhong was overjoyed to discover he'd neatly arranged his cloth tiger toy beside his pillow without being asked. The young master knows how to tidy up now, she exclaimed. My unconventional child-rearing methods somehow became the talk of the entire residence. The story grew with each telling. I was said to have a magical touch, able to tame even the wildest little demon and make him clever. Even Steward Fu began looking at me with genuine respect instead of pity. The news traveled fast, eventually reaching beyond the palace walls. One warm afternoon, I was lounging lazily on a wicker chair in my courtyard. Xiao Bao lay at my feet on a mat, drawing his quirky, colorful world on water-soluble cloth I'd specially prepared for him. It could be washed and reused, saving paper and allowing him endless practice. The courtyard gate opened silently. A flash of bright yellow robes. I nearly rolled off my chair in shock. The emperor himself, Zhao Chen's elder brother, Xiao Bao's uncle, stood in my humble courtyard. Why was he here? I scrambled to my feet to perform a proper bow, but the emperor waved me off casually. His eyes went straight to Xiao Bao on the mat, filled with warmth and the gentle authority of a doting elder. Xiao Bao. The little one looked up. His eyes brightened immediately. He dropped his brush and scrambled into the emperor's waiting arms. Uncle Emperor. The emperor laughed, lifting him easily. You're getting heavy. Looks like Consort Lin has been feeding you well. His gaze swept over the colorful scribbles on the cloth. What are you doing? Drawing. Xiao Bao announced proudly, pointing at his abstract masterpiece. Flowers. Bugs. The emperor examined the drawing with genuine interest. The scribbles were so abstract that even the greatest artist would struggle to decipher them, blobs of ink that might be flowers, squiggly lines that could be bugs. He studied it thoughtfully, his smile unwavering. You've drawn very well, Xiao Bao. Tell Uncle Emperor, what color is this flower? The chubby little hand pointed at a dark blot. Red. Then at a lighter splotch. Pink. A flicker of surprise crossed the emperor's eyes. He looked at me with renewed interest. He can recognize colors. I lowered my head respectfully. Your Majesty, the young master has learned a little. He's quite sensitive to colors and patterns. The emperor nodded slowly, then pointed to a crooked line nearby. And what is this? Bug. Xiao Bao answered confidently. Carrying food. Diligent. The emperor was visibly stunned. He held Xiao Bao close, looked at the simple drawing, then at me standing quietly to the side, appearing modest and well-behaved. His expression grew thoughtful and deep. Consort Lin, he said, his tone unreadable. I hear that Xiao Bao has gained much under your care. My heart thumped anxiously. Your Majesty flatters me. The young master is naturally clever. I merely guide him according to his nature. Guide according to his nature, the emperor repeated thoughtfully. He looked at Xiao Bao's bright, curious eyes, then at my modest but lively courtyard with its simple teaching materials scattered about. Finally, his gaze settled on me with an intensity that made me nervous. Chen has found a good place for Xiao Bao, he said quietly. Shortly after the emperor's visit, an official edict arrived at the prince's residence, delivered personally by the chief eunuch. Though gentle in wording, it was absolutely unequivocal. The gist: The young heir of Prince Zhao, Zhao Xiaobao, is intelligent but young and requires proper guidance. Consort Lin, being gentle-natured and skilled with children, well-versed in nurturing and early education, is hereby permitted to continue educating the young master. By imperial decree. After the edict was read aloud, the entire residence fell silent. Zhao Chen's expression was priceless. Like he'd bitten into something both sweet and sour at the same time. He'd probably never dreamed that the troublesome child he'd dumped on me wouldn't burn me at all. Instead, it had turned into an imperial golden rice bowl in my hands. From then on, my unofficial job of lazy consort raising a kid was upgraded to an official position, raising the heir by imperial decree. The days of raising the young master by imperial command were high pressure, but somehow not unbearable. Xiao Bao was still my biggest challenge, the only thing disrupting my lazy lifestyle. Yet watching him change day by day, from a clueless little firecracker to a boy who could point at clouds and say like cotton candy, who crouched by puddles after rain grinning at his reflection, who ran over to pat my arm when I accidentally banged my elbow and murmured "Mother," not hurt, something deep in my heart began to warm and soften. I was still a lazy consort at heart. Just occasionally rolling over to sun my other side. But the emperor's edict was like a massive stone thrown into a still pond. The surface remained calm, but underneath, currents churned. The first to lose her composure was another consort in the residence, Lady Mai. Lady Mai, as delicate and beautiful as her name suggested, was like a willow swaying in the wind. Fragile, elegant, the type to invoke pity at first sight. Her family background was far superior to my lowly fifth-rank father, a proper official's daughter from a prestigious clan. Rumor had it she'd entered the residence with eyes on becoming the principal consort. Instead, she'd gotten neither the position nor any attention. Both had been stolen by me and my lazy child-rearing antics. Could she accept that quietly? Of course not. So on one supposedly gentle afternoon, actually fraught with tension, she arrived at my courtyard carrying an elaborate box of pastries, reportedly made by a famous chef from the south. She claimed it was just a casual visit to see the young master. Xiao Bao lay on the floor, engrossed in a simple map I'd drawn for him, using small wooden blocks as carts and horses to play deliver grain to the capital. Grain. Grain arrived. Nobody hungry, he muttered seriously to himself. Lady Mai glided in like fragrance on the wind, her sweet perfume immediately overpowering the dried osman thus scent in my courtyard. Xiao Bao wrinkled his little nose and sneezed. Young master. Lady Mai's voice dripped like honey as she crouched gracefully, extending the pastry box. Look what Auntie Mai brought you. Crystal cakes, so sweet and delicious. Xiao Bao glanced at the delicate pastries, then at his grain convoy on the floor. With surprising determination, he waved his chubby hand dismissively. Delivering grain. Busy. He continued pushing his wooden blocks. Lady Mai's practiced smile froze on her face. She remained crouched awkwardly, then looked up at me with a voice tinged with mild reproach. Sister Lin, I don't mean to criticize, but the young master's position is so noble. How can you let him play with mud and wooden blocks all the time? It's rather unbecoming, don't you think? She took out an embroidered handkerchief to wipe Xiao Bao's dirt-stained hands. Look at these little hands, so dirty. Xiao Bao, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, suddenly jerked his hands away and hid behind me. He peeked out, glaring warily at Lady Mai. Her hand froze mid-air. The composure on her face cracked. I slowly put down the cloth book I'd been sewing, filled with simple animal illustrations and characters for Xiao Bao's lessons. Lady Mai, you're very thoughtful, I said calmly. But the young master is still very small, naturally curious and energetic. Playing with soil and wooden blocks allows him to sense weight, recognize different textures, and understand concepts like cooperation and sequences. There's nothing inappropriate about it. I pointed at Xiao Bao's neatly arranged convoy. See? He understands front and back positioning. He knows about delivery and transportation. And he says grain arrived, nobody hungry. The concept of caring for the people is already taking root in his young mind. Isn't this better than confining a small child to a room for rigid memorization? Lady Mai was rendered speechless by my twisted logic. She probably thought I was insane, elevating mud play to matters of state governance. She straightened up, brushing an imaginary crease from her perfect skirt. Her smile turned cold and sharp. Sister Lin, your tongue is certainly clever. No wonder you can charm both the young master and those in high positions. She paused deliberately. However, the young master is ultimately the prince's legitimate son and heir. One day he'll inherit the title and bring glory to our family. If you only indulge his nature and he grows up knowing only play but not the wisdom of the sages, when that day comes, the responsibility. I'll take it. A hard, cold voice cut through the air from the courtyard gate. Zhao Chen stood there, unnoticed until this moment, dressed in black robes, his expression unreadable. Lady Mai went pale and hurriedly bowed low. Prince. Zhao Chen ignored her completely. His gaze swept over Xiao Bao, still deeply absorbed in his grain delivery game, then landed squarely on me. I have entrusted the young master to Consort Lin. How she raises him is her decision. His tone was calm but carried unmistakable authority. Lady Mai, rather than pondering these matters, perhaps you should focus on copying sutras to pray for blessings. Copying sutras, that was punishment work assigned to errant concubines. Lady Mai's face drained of all color. Her eyes reddened. She wanted to argue, but Zhao Chen said coldly, "You may leave." Lady Mai bit her lip hard, shot me one venomous glare, and retreated in humiliation. The courtyard was left with just the three of us and the soft clatter of Xiao Bao's wooden blocks. Zhao Chen walked over and crouched down beside his son, examining the crooked, uneven convoy he'd arranged with such concentration. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Xiao Bao didn't even lift his head. "Delivering grain. 4 hungry people." Zhao Chen was clearly taken aback. He looked up at me questioningly. I feigned innocence. The young master has a kind heart. I simply let him follow his interests. Zhao Chen was silent for a long moment, staring at the simple wooden blocks. Then, without a word, he reached out and gently placed another block at the end of Xiao Bao's convoy. Add 1 more cart," he said quietly. Xiao Bao beamed up at his father with pure joy. Lady Mai's failed visit seemed to flip some invisible switch in the residence. My lazy little courtyard inexplicably became the prince's model education site. Other low-profile concubines began showing up with flimsy excuses, delivering trinkets or snacks for the young master. Between the lines of polite conversation, they were trying to figure out how I'd trained Xiao Bao. What secret methods did I possess? I had none. Just the same philosophy: follow his nature, teach through play. They left utterly confused, probably thinking I was either a genius or completely mad. Later, even Steward Fu came shuffling to my courtyard, red-faced and awkward, wringing his hands nervously. "Consort Lin, this old servant has an unruly grandnephew, also at the age to begin learning. Mischievous beyond measure, drives his mother to tears daily. I dare to ask your advice." Considering he'd once brought Xiao Bao to me out of loyalty to the prince, I felt some goodwill toward him. I casually sketched a few simple animal drawings: chickens, ducks, cats, dogs, and wrote corresponding basic characters beside them. Big, small, many, few. Steward Fu, let the child first recognize the image, then associate it with the character. If the characters are too complicated, children get frustrated and give up. Start with common, simple, tangible things. He'll understand more easily and stay interested. Steward Fu was overjoyed, thanking me profusely as if I'd given him gold, and hurried away clutching the simple drawings. I thought that was the end of it. I could not have been more wrong. The real surprise came a few days later. One afternoon, Zhao Chen suddenly appeared in my courtyard. His expression was very odd, hesitant, as if struggling with something he couldn't quite say. "Consort Lin." He paused. "The images you gave to Steward Fu." My heart sank. Oh no. Those scrap paper drawings had reached the prince's hands. Did he think I was being presumptuous? Overstepping my position? I hurried to explain. They were just casual sketches, my lord, unworthy of anyone's attention. Only meant to help a child. "No." Zhao Chen interrupted, his eyes complex and unreadable. Father, His Majesty a few days ago tested the young princes on their lessons in the imperial study. A bad premonition crept up my spine. The results were unsatisfactory, Zhao Chen continued, rubbing his brow as if pained by the memory. His Majesty was quite displeased. He rebuked the grand tutors for their rigid teaching methods, saying they were wasting the children's time and natural talents. He paused, looking at me with that strange expression again. After returning to the palace, His Majesty somehow heard about your methods for teaching Xiao Bao. And he seemed to struggle with the words. Steward Fu's grandnephew using your method has recognized dozens of common characters in just over a month. The child's mother reported this progress to her husband, who mentioned it at court. My legs felt weak. His Majesty has issued an edict, Zhao Chen said, his voice carrying weary resignation. Summoning you to the palace tomorrow. Summon me? To the palace? I stammered. Yes. His eyes watched my face carefully. To explain your follow nature, teach through play philosophy to the imperial grand tutors. For enlightening young learners. A thunderbolt from clear skies. Multiple lightning strikes. Me, a lazy consort who wanted nothing but peaceful naps, was supposed to lecture the highest scholarly minds in the realm. To explain to top Confucian scholars how to teach children by letting them play in mud, watch ants, and draw crooked turtles. Your Majesty, do you perhaps misunderstand what education means? My vision darkened. I could see countless labels flying at me: heretical teaching, misleading the young, desecrating sacred learning, ready to turn this lazy consort into minced fish paste. My lord, my voice trembled, I am terrified. What merit or ability do I have for such a task? His will is decided, Zhao Chen stated flatly, cutting off all escape routes. Seeing my genuine panic, something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. Don't worry too much, he said slowly. His Majesty only wants you to explain your methods, not to sit for the imperial examination. Those old scholars, he snorted softly, should hear a different perspective for once. It might do them good. The next day, I felt like a martyr walking to the execution ground. Dressed in proper consort attire, nothing too fancy, nothing that could be called overstepping, and carrying my homemade cloth book filled with drawings of animals and crooked characters, I was carried to the palace in a discreet sedan chair. Destination: the side hall of the Hall of Literary Glory. Emperor Zhao himself did not personally attend, which somehow made everything worse. His absence created an atmosphere even more oppressive than if he'd been watching. Sandalwood incense curled through the air, making everything feel dreamlike and suffocating. Behind several heavy rosewood desks sat 3 elderly men in deep crimson and purple official robes, the grand tutors of the capital. Grand Tutor Wei, Scholar Chen, and Master Liu. Lean, severe faces. Sharp eyes like hunting eagles. They didn't look at me like someone invited to share knowledge. They looked at me like a heretic who'd trespassed into their sacred hall, defiling its scholarly purity with peasant nonsense. The air was so thick I could barely breathe. My palms were sweating as I silently cursed both the Emperor and Zhao Chen 100 times in my head. Ahem. Grand Tutor Wei cleared his throat, breaking the terrible silence. His voice, though aged, carried immense weight and authority. Consort Lin. You are here. I bowed my head respectfully, keeping my eyes lowered. This humble consort greets the honored tutors. His Majesty commands you to explain your methods of enlightening young learners, Grand Tutor Wei continued, his tone carefully neutral. We are prepared to listen. My scalp prickled with nervousness. I merely observed the young master and developed some very rudimentary insights. Hardly worth. Oh. Scholar Chen stroked his long white beard, speaking in a slow, deliberate manner. I hear the young master has made remarkable progress under your care. No study of the classics, no formal etiquette training, only play, and yet somehow, enlightened. The barb in his words was unmistakable. Interesting indeed. You and your rogue methods dare speak of education? His expression said clearly. I took a deep breath. I had nothing left to lose. A lazy consort pushed to the wall will jump over that wall. Honored scholar, I lifted my head, forcing myself to meet his sharp gaze even though my legs were trembling. The young master is very small, his mind still tender and developing. The sacred texts are profound, the rites and regulations complex. Forcing such weighty knowledge upon him now would be like pouring an entire bucket of water on a tiny sapling. It does far more harm than good. All three elderly scholars frowned simultaneously, their faces darkening. Then in your opinion, Consort Lin, Master Liu said with a cold sneer, we should simply let children play? Waste their precious learning years? Not at all, honored master. I opened my shabby cloth book and spread it carefully on the table before them. The essence of enlightenment begins with capturing interest. Where genuine interest exists, the mind opens naturally even to the hardest lessons. I pointed to a somewhat lopsided rooster I'd drawn on the cloth, beside the character for chicken. To a young child, this is a familiar, living creature from the courtyard. They've seen it stretch its neck and crow at dawn. They've watched its bright feathers shine in sunlight. First, the child recognizes the creature's form, hears its sound, observes its behavior. Then we introduce the written character chicken. The connection between the living thing and the symbol becomes natural and memorable, far more effective than forcing a 3-year-old to memorize the rooster knows when to announce the dawn through endless rote repetition. I flipped to another page showing ants carrying food, with the characters for many and few beside them. Here, observe an ant colony cooperating to transport grains of rice. Ask the child, are there many ants or few? Is there much food or little? The concepts of quantity and comparison emerge naturally through observation and play. This isn't frivolity, honored tutors. This is the beginning of understanding the world through direct experience and practice. Complete silence filled the hall. Only my thundering heartbeat echoed in my ears. The three elderly scholars stared at my crude, messy cloth book. Their expressions, which had initially been filled with disdain and deep skepticism, gradually shifted to something more thoughtful, serious consideration, perhaps even the faintest hint of interest. Grand Tutor Wei picked up the cloth book with his thin, bony fingers, tracing the simple drawings and characters carefully. This is what the young prince has been learning. His voice was quieter now, less harsh. Yes, honored Grand Tutor, I nodded. At first, he only scribbled randomly and tore things apart, as small children do. But starting from familiar, concrete objects, progressing from simple to complex, from form to meaning, step by careful step, now he recognizes over 100 common characters and has developed basic understanding of daily matters and even some abstract concepts like kindness and diligence. Scholar Chen stroked his beard thoughtfully. You don't teach the 3-character classic or 1,000-character text in the traditional manner? I do use them, honored scholar, but not through rigid rote memorization that means nothing to a young mind. The young master is naturally active and cannot sit still for long periods. I integrate lessons into his play and daily activities. When we pile sand into a mountain, I point out the character mountain. When we play near water, I teach water. When we act out simple stories like Kong Rong yielding the pear to his brothers, I teach concepts of humility and family love through drama and play. I took a breath, feeling slightly bolder. Books are static things, honored tutors. But children are alive, dynamic, constantly moving and learning. Their minds are like gardens that need the right conditions to flourish, not forced growth that damages the roots. Master Liu's furrowed brow loosened slightly, tailoring instruction to the child's natural disposition. Exactly, honored master. I seized on this opening eagerly. Each child has a different temperament and learning style. The young master is curious and energetic by nature. Forcing him to sit rigidly at a desk for hours only breeds resistance and hatred of learning. But by following his natural interests and guiding them toward knowledge, seeds of wisdom are planted through joyful experience. Later, when his mind matures and these foundations are firmly in place, teaching the profound wisdom of the sages becomes far more effective and natural. The soil has been prepared, the crop will grow strong. I spoke in one long breath, my mouth dry, my back completely soaked with nervous sweat. Silence fell again in that incense-filled hall. The 3 grand tutors exchanged long, meaningful glances. The initial rejection and contempt in their eyes had vanished. Instead, there was careful assessment, deep contemplation, and unless I was imagining it, a trace of grudging approval. Grand Tutor Wei set down the cloth book slowly, exhaling a long breath. When his gaze returned to me, it held unexpected warmth. Consort Lin's words, though simply expressed, strike at the very heart of educational philosophy. Enlightening young learners cannot be accomplished by forcing premature growth. One must first strengthen the foundation, nurture genuine interest, and work with the child's nature rather than against it. Scholar Chen nodded, still stroking his beard. Teaching through play, guiding according to natural disposition. I have observed the young master recently during court gatherings. He is indeed different from before, lively yet increasingly intelligent, innocent yet showing budding awareness of the world around him. This method, he paused, perhaps has considerable merit. Master Liu remained silent, but his severe expression had softened considerably. He even gave a small nod. Stepping out of the hall of literary glory into the early summer sunshine felt like being reborn. My legs were still weak and shaky. On the carriage ride back to the residence, I leaned against the wall with my eyes closed, still replaying those inscrutable scholarly gazes in my mind. Heaven knows how I survived that encounter. But somehow, I had. When I finally returned to my lazy little courtyard, Xiao Bao came barreling toward me like a tiny cannonball. Mother. He wrapped his arms around my legs, looking up with his sweet little face full of concern. Did you see the emperor? Was he scary? I froze. How did he know where I'd been? Nanny Zhong laughed beside us. After you entered the palace this morning, the young master was restless all day. He kept saying Mother went to see scary old grandpas with the emperor. Wouldn't eat properly, wouldn't play. Just worried. My heart melted completely. I crouched down and pinched his soft, round cheeks gently. No need to be afraid, little treasure. The old grandpas weren't scary at all. Really? His eyes were wide and uncertain. Really, I assured him, pulling him close. See that pomegranate tree in our courtyard? He nodded, following my pointing finger. When the pomegranate flowers bloom, they're bright red and beautiful, right? Beautiful. Xiao Bao agreed enthusiastically. But now it has green fruit, hard and sour, not pretty at all, correct? He frowned at the unripe fruit, nodding. But come autumn, I said with a warm smile, those ugly green fruits will turn deep red and sweet, full of seeds like little rubies. The scholarly old grandpas are like that pomegranate tree. Their minds are filled with so much knowledge, like green fruit, they seem serious and hard to approach. But when we slowly understand them, we find they're full of sweet treasures inside. Xiao Bao blinked, only half understanding. Treasures? Yes, treasures of wisdom. I kissed his small forehead. And you're learning to find those treasures too. The Hall of Literary Glory incident spread through palace circles in ways I never could have imagined. It was said that after the 3 grand tutors returned from our meeting, they held closed-door discussions for several days. Then a revolutionary new teaching program emerged, combining traditional recitation of classics with what they called experimental learning methods, quietly implemented among the younger royal children. The results were apparently promising. At least the emperor stopped flying into rages about the prince's educational progress. My reputation in the residence, and even in certain corners of the palace, transformed completely. I was no longer just the lazy consort. Now I was the child-rearing virtuoso, the educational innovator, or sometimes just that strange woman who teaches through play. Even Zhao Chen's gaze toward me grew increasingly complex, assessing, questioning, with depths I couldn't begin to understand. The days continued passing in a blur of Xiao Bao's endless questions. Mother, why do birds fly? Because they have wings and dream of seeing the world from high above. Then Xiao Bao wants to fly too. That's a bit tricky. But we can make a big kite and let it fly for you. You can hold the string and guide it through the clouds. Mother, why are flowers red? Perhaps because the sun gave them so many warm kisses. Then Xiao Bao wants sun kisses too. Turn red. Too many sun kisses will just make you sunburned and uncomfortable, little treasure. My previously lazy brain was being squeezed dry daily. Then came a new development on a crisp autumn afternoon. A palace messenger arrived, not the usual edict-bearing eunuch, but the emperor's most trusted personal steward. He brought significant news. The envoy from the northern steppe kingdom would soon arrive in the capital. Among their delegation was the Khan's most favored young son, a prince about Xiao Bao's age. The emperor intended that during the welcoming banquet, the two children would meet and play together. Seemingly innocent entertainment for children. In reality, a subtle political test. After all, the northern prince represented his kingdom's prestige and future, while Xiao Bao represented the celestial empire's dignity and the next generation of leadership. The steward looked at me, his tone gentle yet carrying the weight of imperial mountains. His Majesty says, "The young master of Prince Zhao is clever and kind-hearted, a source of great comfort to us. This meeting of the young ones touches upon matters of state. Consort Lin is to guide them appropriately." Cold sweat broke out on my back immediately. "Your Majesty, you vastly overestimate this lazy consort's abilities. Two small children, barely past toddlerhood, somehow affecting relations between kingdoms? The pressure was 100 times worse than lecturing the grand tutors. On the day of the grand palace banquet, the Hall of Eternal Peace was decorated magnificently, red lanterns and flowing banners everywhere, silk and bamboo music filling the air with elegant melodies. Royal family members, high-ranking officials, and military ministers gathered in a spectacular assembly, dressed in their finest ceremonial robes. The northern steppe delegation sat at the lower tables on the eastern side. Beside their burly, bearded chief envoy sat a small boy in elaborate ethnic clothing, leather and furs adorned with intricate beadwork. He had curly dark hair and striking brown eyes. This was the young Prince Tema. His gaze darted around with bright curiosity, clearly an intelligent, spirited child. Xiao Bao sat beside me at our designated place below Zhao Chen's seat. It was his first time at such a grand state banquet. His little head swiveled constantly, taking in all the magnificent new sights. He behaved remarkably well, though his chubby hand clutched mine tightly the entire time. After several ceremonial toasts, when the atmosphere reached its peak of festivity, the emperor smiled broadly and spoke, his voice carrying throughout the vast hall. "Today's gathering brings us great joy. We hear that young Prince Tema is about the same age as our nephew Xiao Bao, both innocent and delightful children. Why not let these two young friends meet and enjoy themselves together? Here it comes." Every eye in the hall immediately turned toward the two small children. The bearded chief envoy stood quickly and bowed with practiced diplomacy, then nudged his young prince forward proudly. "Your Majesty's graciousness knows no bounds. Young prince, come forward." Tema jumped confidently from his chair and walked into the center of the hall with surprising poise for one so young. Xiao Bao glanced at me, then at his father uncertainly. I gently released his hand and whispered close to his ear, "Go on, Xiao Bao. Just treat it like making a new friend in our courtyard. Be yourself." He took a deep breath, so serious and determined it was adorable, and waddled into the hall on his short legs. The two little ones stood together in the center of that magnificent space, under the watching eyes of two kingdoms. One with curly hair, brown eyes, and exotic charm in his leather and furs. One with straight black hair, bright dark eyes, delicate and lovely in his silk robes. A murmur of admiration rippled through the assembled nobles. The emperor laughed warmly. "Excellent. Little friends, do you have favorite games you'd like to share? Shall we play together and become friends?" A translator quickly conveyed the emperor's words to young Tema in his native tongue. The northern prince's eyes lit up with excitement. He spoke rapidly in his own language, gesturing enthusiastically. The translator bowed and announced clearly, "Your Majesty, the young prince says that children of the steppes excel at wrestling and tests of strength. He wishes to compete with His Highness the young master to see who is stronger." Wrestling. In the imperial hall. Instant, terrible silence fell like a heavy blanket. Everyone's expressions shifted, surprise, concern, calculation flashing across noble faces. Two small children wrestling in the golden hall of the celestial empire? If Xiao Bao won, it might seem like bullying a foreign guest and create diplomatic tension. If he lost, unthinkable, where would the empire's face be? This northern prince, seemingly innocent, had chosen a devastatingly clever challenge. The emperor's smile remained perfectly pleasant, but I could see the sharpness in his eyes as he looked at Xiao Bao. "Xiao Bao," he said gently, Do you wish to play this wrestling game with Prince Tema? Every heart in that hall held its breath. Zhao Chen's hand, resting on his lap, clenched into a tight fist. I could see the tension in his jaw. My own heart leapt into my throat. Xiao Bao was sturdy for his age, yes, but Tema looked even stronger, and wrestling was obviously something stepchildren practiced from infancy. Xiao Bao had never tried wrestling in his life. He blinked his large, innocent eyes, looking at the eager Tema across from him with his challenging stance. Then he turned and looked directly at me. His gaze was clear, questioning, trusting completely in whatever guidance I might give. My hand, hidden in my sleeve, dug fingernails into my palm so hard it hurt. In a split second, countless images flashed through my mind. Xiao Bao crouching intently beside an anthill, fascinated by cooperation. His excitement at pointing to clouds shaped like cotton candy. His earnest little chant while pushing his wooden grain carts, "Not hungry, nobody hungry," and that crooked turtle he'd drawn with such pure creative joy. A desperate, bold thought crystallized. I met Xiao Bao's questioning gaze. Barely perceptibly, so subtle only he could see, I shook my head just slightly. Then with my lips, I silently formed a single word, "Draw." Xiao Bao's eyes lit up with understanding and relief. He turned back to face the emperor, standing as tall as his small body allowed. His voice rang out clear and confident in that silent hall. "Uncle Emperor, Xiao Bao will not wrestle." The hall erupted in shocked whispers and gasps. The bearded envoy's face revealed barely concealed triumph, clearly he'd expected this outcome, planned for it even. The emperor's expression flickered with something complex. "Oh, and why not, little one?" Xiao Bao puffed out his chest, holding his ground with unexpected dignity. "Xiao Bao and Tema are friends. Friends don't fight and hurt each other." He paused, then pointed deliberately at his own dark eyes, then at Tema's striking brown ones. "Tema's eyes are beautiful. Like warm honey in sunshine." The translator hurried to convey this to the northern prince. Tema paused, surprised. He instinctively touched near his own eyes, and a shy, genuinely happy smile spread across his young face. Clearly, he hadn't expected a compliment. Xiao Bao continued, his voice full of childlike enthusiasm and sincerity. "Xiao Bao likes to draw pictures. Tema, let's draw together. Draw your honey eyes. Draw big horses from your home. Draw tall houses and mountains." He pointed eagerly at the ornate painted ceiling far above them. "Draw everything. Together." The entire hall fell into stunned, bewildered silence. This was a complete reversal no one had anticipated. But then Tema's face lit up when the translation reached him. He spoke rapidly and excitedly, bouncing on his feet. The translator looked somewhat bemused as he reported, "The young prince says, he also likes drawing very much. He would be happy to draw with the young master." The emperor's eyes flickered with something that looked very much like delighted approval. He laughed, the sound genuine and warm, breaking the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. "Excellent. Truly excellent. Friends don't fight, what wisdom from such a young mouth." He clapped his hands decisively. "Yes, let them draw together. Bring ink, brushes, and silk immediately." Servants scrambled to obey, quickly bringing a low table into the center of the hall. They spread out fine white silk and prepared colorful paints and brushes of various sizes. Under the watchful eyes of two kingdoms' representatives, the two small children lay side by side on the giant silk canvas spread across the floor. Xiao Bao picked up a brush, dipped it confidently in reddish-brown paint, and drew a somewhat crooked but spirited horse, clearly inspired by Tema's homeland. Tema was not to be outdone. He drew a round, fluffy sheep, though it looked more like a fuzzy ball with stick legs. He giggled at his own creation. Then Xiao Bao drew a round face and carefully added a pair of brown eyes, honey eyes, to represent his new friend. Tema laughed with pure delight and drew a round face with black eyes to represent Xiao Bao. The two little heads leaned close together, completely absorbed in their collaborative art. "You draw this. I add that." Language barriers meant nothing. Laughter, excited babbling, and cheerful little sounds of creativity echoed through the previously tense hall. A childlike, colorful, wildly abstract friendship scroll slowly unfolded atop the golden tiles of the imperial palace floor. Not just innocent laughter and the soft scratching of brushes on silk filled the space, the entire atmosphere transformed. The previous tension melted away completely, replaced by relaxed joy and genuine admiration. The emperor clapped his hands and laughed heartily, his pleasure unmistakable. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. This painting shall be preserved in the palace treasury, and this scene shall become a celebrated tale of friendship between our two nations for generations to come. The pride and calculated triumph that had shone on the northern envoy's face vanished entirely. Seeing the genuine happiness radiating from his little Prince Zhao, friendship forming before his eyes, he stood, bowed deeply to the emperor with sincere respect, and spoke with honest admiration coloring his words. The celestial empire's grace and dignity, the young master's kindness and remarkable cleverness, my prince feels completely at home in your presence. Our kingdom shall forever remember and honor your majesty's benevolence. A potentially delicate diplomatic incident had been completely diffused by two children with paintbrushes and open hearts. Zhao Chen's tense shoulders finally relaxed. Through the noisy, cheerful crowd, he turned to look directly at me. His eyes were like deep pools in moonlight, bottomless and dark. The emotions swirling within them were unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Shock, curiosity, dawning comprehension, and something else, something warm and intense that made my breath catch. The banquet eventually ended. By the time we returned to the residence, night had fallen deep and heavy. I coaxed the overexcited Xiao Bao to sleep, he kept muttering honey eyes, friend Tema even in his dreams, and finally stepped out of his little room, exhausted to my core. Under the silver moonlight, Zhao Chen stood beneath the pomegranate tree in my courtyard, hands clasped behind his back, clearly waiting for me. Moonlight washed everything in pale light, making the world seem unreal. Your Highness. My heart skipped nervously. He turned slowly. Moonlight traced the sharp, elegant lines of his face, but his eyes shone brighter and more intense than the moon itself. Today in the hall, he said, his voice low and controlled. That was your doing, wasn't it? I lowered my eyes respectfully. I merely gave the young master a choice when he looked to me for guidance. A single word, Zhao Chen said. Draw. Yes, my lord. Why drawing? He took a step closer. I paused, then looked up to meet his penetrating gaze. Because the young master loves it. Because drawing needs no common language, only open hearts. Because swords and wrestling may wound and create division, but brush and ink. I took a breath. Brush and ink create beauty that endures and brings people together. Zhao Chen studied me intently. His gaze was sharp and searching, as if trying to see past my skin into whatever lay beneath. Lin Qing Ya. For the first time since our wedding night, he spoke my full name. Since you entered this household, you have behaved yourself impeccably. You lived a quiet, unambitious life in your corner. I thought. He paused. I thought you had no aspirations, that you were dull and uninteresting. Forgettable. He stepped forward again. His tall frame loomed over me, imposing and somehow magnetic in the moonlight. Yet you've hidden so much beneath that placid surface. My heart constricted. My lord, No need to argue, he interrupted, but there was peculiar warmth beneath his stern tone. In the hall of literary glory, you held your own against the empire's most learned scholars. I thought you merely quick-witted and bold. But today, in the Golden Hall, you turned potential disaster into diplomatic triumph with a single whispered word. He made a sound, almost a laugh, startlingly clear in the quiet night. I find myself curious, Lin Qing Ya. He reached out slowly. His long fingers, cool with night air, lifted my chin gently but firmly, forcing me to meet his bottomless gaze. My lazy, unambitious consort who wants nothing but sunny napping spots, how many more surprises do you hide that I don't know about? Then he released me and turned away, leaving as silently as he'd come. I stood alone under the cold moonlight, the pomegranate tree's shadow falling across me. The sweat on my back cooled in the night breeze. His last words, that penetrating look like an invisible net that had thoroughly ensnared me, a fish that only wanted to bask peacefully in shallow waters. Life appeared to return to normal after that night. Yet everything had changed. Zhao Chen began visiting my courtyard far more frequently. Sometimes in the evening to see Xiao Bao before bed. Sometimes in the afternoon, ostensibly to handle paperwork, spreading documents across my stone table while Xiao Bao played nearby. More often, he simply sat in silence, watching me tell Xiao Bao my unconventional teaching stories or guide him through the courtyard, counting ants, observing clouds, watering flowers, and discussing their growth. His gaze always lingered on me. Heavy, exploratory, assessing with an intensity one couldn't quite comprehend but could definitely feel. The pressure was immense. I, a fish who only wanted lazy peace, was forced to keep performing under his watchful presence. On Xiao Bao's 5th birthday, the palace sent lavish gifts, toys, clothes, books. The emperor even specially decreed that I could take the young master to the imperial deer park for an entire day, as a reward for the exemplary child-rearing of Consort Lin. The deer park, nestled among gentle mountains and clear streams, was breathtakingly beautiful. Tame deer roamed freely among ancient trees. Xiao Bao was ecstatic, running and playing like a puppy let loose after being cooped up too long. I sat on a smooth green stone beside a bubbling stream, watching his small figure darting through dappled sunlight, feeling a rare and precious peace settle over my heart. "It seems you truly love it here." A low, familiar voice sounded right beside me. I didn't need to turn my head to know who it was. Zhao Chen had somehow appeared and now sat down on the stone next to me, close enough that I could smell the faint, clean scent of pine and sandalwood that clung to him. Today he wore not his usual formal princely robes but a simple black fitted outfit. Less austere, more human. "Even with all your important state duties, my lord finds time to visit a deer park," I said lightly, keeping my eyes forward on Xiao Bao's playing form. "I've stolen a brief respite from the world's troubles," he replied quietly. The stream babbled peacefully. Sunlight filtered through rustling leaves, casting moving patterns of gold on the ground. Xiao Bao's delighted giggles drifted on the warm breeze. The atmosphere was strangely harmonious despite an underlying tension I couldn't name. "Qing Ya," he said suddenly, using my personal name. When you first entered my household." He turned his head, his gaze settling heavily on my face. "Did you harbor resentment toward me?" I froze, completely unprepared for such a direct question. "Resentment?" I tugged at the corner of my mouth in a humorless smile. "My lord shows such grace by even asking. Be honest." His voice deepened with unmistakable command. I fell silent for a long moment, watching a small silver fish swim past in the clear stream water. "I resented many things," I finally said quietly. "I resented my parents for treating me as nothing more than a political pawn to advance their positions. I resented myself for being too powerless to resist or choose my own path." I paused, still not looking at him. "And I resented you, my lord, for treating me as if I didn't exist at all." Zhao Chen said nothing. The silence stretched so long I thought the conversation was over, that I'd overstepped terribly. Then he spoke, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "That was my fault." I froze completely, turning to stare at him in shock. But he wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Xiao Bao in the distance, chasing deer with innocent joy. Those eyes held deep pain and old grief. "When Xiao Bao's mother left this world," he said quietly, my heart turned to ashes. I felt there was nothing left worth caring about, nothing that could touch me. He took a slow breath. "When you entered the household, you were nothing more than another piece in the endless political games, your father's ambition, the minister's power balancing. I despised such manipulation." His lips curved in a self-mocking smile. "So I took my anger out on you. Pretended not to see you. Left my son in your care as if you were just another servant." Then he finally turned his gaze back to me. Those eyes, usually cold as distant starlight, now reflected the stream's rippling light and carried unexpected warmth. "I never imagined you would raise him so well. Transform him so completely." His voice dropped lower, taking on a strange, almost vulnerable quality. "Nor did I imagine that this dead, frozen path I'd been walking would be brought back to life by a self-proclaimed lazy fish like you." The stream gurgled softly. The sunlight felt almost too warm, making me dizzy. His words fell like smooth stones into my heart's still lake, sending ripples spreading outward in all directions. I opened my mouth but found no words would come. After we returned from the deer park, something fundamental shifted between Zhao Chen and me. It felt as if only the thinnest sheet of paper separated us now, so fragile, so easily pierced. He never mentioned that day's conversation again, but he came to my courtyard even more often. Sometimes, even after Xiao Bao had fallen deeply asleep, Zhao Chen would sit across from me in comfortable silence, sip tea, exchange a few trivial observations about the day, or simply remain quiet together. The atmosphere was subtle, charged, yet somehow peaceful. Until one day when an urgent letter from the south shattered the fragile fortress of my contentment. It was from my mother, her handwriting messy and tear-stained, nearly illegible in places. The letter said my father had been caught up in what she called a minor but troublesome political affair. Though his life wasn't in immediate danger, his superiors had found various faults with his work. He was being demoted and transferred to Lingnan, the disease-ridden southern frontier, essentially exile for minor officials. My mother was in complete despair, powerless to help, and could only write to me to pour out her desperate worries. Lingnan. Mountains impossibly high and remote, rivers wild and dangerous, thick mists hiding deadly fevers. My parents were aging. This journey might well be their last. I clenched the letter in my hand, fingertips cold despite the warm day. Though I resented their past selfishness in using me as a political tool, blood bonds cannot be completely severed. I couldn't remain unmoved by their suffering. What troubles you? Zhao Chen's voice came from the courtyard entrance. He'd finished morning court early today. I instinctively tried to hide the letter, but he noticed instantly. Give it here. His tone left no room for refusal. I hesitated, then handed it over with trembling fingers. He scanned it quickly, his brows drawing together. Your father? Yes, my lord. Do you wish to save him? I pressed my lips together tightly, saying nothing. My nails dug crescents into my palms. Save him? With what power? I was just a powerless secondary consort in a prince's household. Ask this man before me for help. But why would he? What right did I have to request such a thing for a father who'd never been close to me, who had once treated me as nothing more than a stepping stone? Zhao Chen studied my pale face and clenched fists for a long moment. His eyes were dark, unreadable. I understand, he said simply. He folded the letter carefully, slipped it into his sleeve, and turned to leave without another word. The next several days, I was restless and anxious. Zhao Chen made no move that I could see. The date of my parents' forced departure for Lingnan drew steadily nearer. My heart sank bit by bit with each passing day. Of course. Why should he help? A mere consort's father, already demoted and disgraced, was it worth a prince's political capital to intervene? Just as I was sinking into despair, preparing to write my mother and suggest selling household valuables to at least make the journey more bearable, Steward Fu burst into my courtyard practically dancing with joy. Consort Lin. Consort Lin. Wonderful news. Amazing news. I jumped to my feet. What? Your father. The master doesn't need to go to Lingnan after all. He was beaming so widely I thought his face might split. I stood frozen, unable to process the words. Just now an imperial decree arrived. The Ministry of Personnel reviewed the case and found serious flaws in the evidence against him. The entire matter has been sent back for complete retrial. Your father's rank is restored, and he'll retain his current position pending the investigation's conclusion. My ears buzzed. My vision swam. Did His Highness? Who else could accomplish such a thing? Steward Fu practically danced with excitement. Who else in this empire has such reach and skill? The prince surely. The prince surely what? A low, calm voice cut through Steward Fu's enthusiasm. Zhao Chen stood at the courtyard gate. I hadn't even heard him approach. Steward Fu immediately fell silent, bowed respectfully with a forced smile, and retreated quickly. The courtyard was left with only the two of us. I looked at Zhao Chen, my throat tight, 1,000 words tangling in my chest. All that could emerge was a deep, formal bow. This humble consort thanks Your Highness for his immense grace and kindness. He stepped closer. His tall figure carried invisible but undeniable presence. No need for such formal thanks, he said, his tone measured and calm. Your father's situation was indeed suspicious upon examination. I merely spoke plainly about the inconsistencies in the evidence. Justice, not favoritism. I looked up at him, searching his impassive face. Plainly and justly, I echoed. As if by fortunate coincidence. His deep gaze locked onto mine, and despite his casual words, intensity burned there. I help you for my own reasons, Qing Ya. What reasons? The question left my lips before I could stop it. Zhao Chen leaned slightly closer. His warm breath brushed my ear, making me shiver. His voice dropped low, carrying unmistakable possessive authority. Since you entered my household, living or dead, you belong here. Your life, your troubles, your family's fate. He paused, enunciating each word with perfect, deliberate clarity. All of it naturally falls under my care and protection. That is simply how it is. My parents' crisis resolved, I realized something profound. This lazy fish could never escape her fate now. The seal had been clearly stamped. Ownership, Prince Zhao. No escape possible. Life continued its strange new rhythm. Xiao Bao grew day by day, still the biggest little troublemaker in the residence, but also the brightest light in my otherwise mundane existence. Zhao Chen became a permanent fixture in my courtyard. Sometimes reviewing official documents at my stone table. Sometimes quizzing Xiao Bao on his lessons using my unconventional methods, which he now seemed to genuinely approve of. Most often just sitting quietly, a solid, silent presence like an ancient mountain that had always been there. Another spring arrived, bringing the famous 100 Flowers banquet in the imperial garden. The emperor was in particularly high spirits. After several rounds of ceremonial wine, flushed with joy and good humor, he pulled 6-year-old Xiao Bao, now tall and sturdy like a young pine tree, into his arms and seated him directly on the dragon throne itself. His gaze swept over Zhao Chen and me seated below. He laughed aloud, the sound carrying across the entire garden. Prince Zhao. I observe this child Xiao Bao wise and kind-hearted, resembling his father in character, and nurtured with such obvious care by his mother. Truly a blessed child of our Zhao family. He deliberately emphasized his mother, looking directly at me. Every eye in that garden turned toward me. Curious gazes, envious whispers, knowing smiles. I sat rigid, desperately uncomfortable, wishing I could disappear. Zhao Chen remained perfectly composed. He stood gracefully and cupped his hands in formal respect. Your Majesty flatters us greatly. Xiao Bao's fortune lies in the protection of the imperial family and also, he paused deliberately, in his mother's careful, devoted guidance. He acknowledged my role openly, before the emperor and the entire court. The emperor nodded with obvious satisfaction, then shifted his tone to something more official. Xiao Bao is growing quickly and showing remarkable intelligence. I intend to select a highly capable tutor for him to begin formal classical studies. The grand tutors can. Uncle Emperor. A clear, childlike voice interrupted boldly. Xiao Bao slipped from the emperor's arms and pitter-pattered directly to me on his short legs. He grabbed my arm and looked up at the emperor with his bright, earnest little face. Xiao Bao doesn't want a new teacher. Xiao Bao has mother. He said it loudly, clearly, with absolute conviction. Mother is the best teacher. Mother teaches about flowers and bugs and drawing and... He took a breath, standing as tall as possible. Mother teaches Xiao Bao to be kind to people. To help people. He pronounced kind and help with special emphasis, as if they were the most important words in the world. The garden fell into stunned silence. The emperor froze mid-gesture. Then he erupted into delighted, genuine laughter that echoed across the flowers and pavilions. Excellent. Excellent. Be kind, help people. What profound simplicity from such a young child. He pointed at Xiao Bao, then glanced warmly at Zhao Chen and me. Enough. How could I possibly go against such a sincere heart? Prince Zhao, Consort Lin, the education of this child shall remain in your capable hands. I shall watch his progress with great interest. Walking back from the 100 Flowers banquet, I held Xiao Bao's hand along the long pathway leading from the palace. The setting sun stretched our shadows long across the ancient stones. Xiao Bao chattered excitedly about everything he'd seen. Mother, Uncle Emperor said Xiao Bao spoke well. He laughed. Yes, you were very brave, little treasure. I'm proud of you. Mother is the best in the whole world. He squeezed my hand tightly. I looked down at his radiant, trusting face, my heart overflowing with warmth. Lazy consort. Child-rearing virtuoso. Educational innovator. None of those labels mattered anymore. Mother, look. Xiao Bao suddenly stopped and pointed at something. A tiny green shoot was stubbornly growing through a crack in the massive palace wall. Just a small plant, tender and determined, pushing up through solid stone toward sunlight. Grass. Xiao Bao observed seriously. The sun shines. It grows taller and stronger. I followed his pointing finger to that small miracle of persistence. The tender green shoot against the imposing vermilion palace wall, small and seemingly insignificant, yet full of quiet, unstoppable life. Very much like me, I realized. A lazy fish thrown into the deep palace waters by fate's currents. Forced into work and responsibility I never wanted. Yet somehow, I'd taken root. Grown. Found purpose. I crouched down beside Xiao Bao, and together we examined the brave little plant. Warm sunlight fell across both of us like a blessing. Yes, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Even a lazy fish, just by soaking in sunlight and living honestly, can grow strong and bloom. Mother. Xiao Bao looked at me with curious eyes. I smiled and ruffled his hair. Nothing, little treasure. Just thinking that sometimes the life we don't choose turns out to be exactly the life we needed. Behind us, unnoticed, Zhao Chen stood in the shadow of a pillar, watching us with an expression of such tenderness it would have shocked anyone who knew only his cold public face. The lazy consort and the little prince, bathed in golden sunset light. His family. His purpose. His unexpected joy. The future stretched ahead, uncertain as all futures are, but somehow filled with warmth and promise neither of us had dared to hope for on that cold wedding night so long ago. If you enjoyed this journey from lazy consort to beloved mother and respected educator, don't forget to subscribe to Lotus Tale Studios for more captivating stories of unexpected love, palace intrigue, and finding your purpose in the most unlikely places. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of story lovers. New tales drop regularly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Until our next story, may you find your own sunny spot to grow, even in the most challenging circumstances.